Hi, this is Luke from Inside Chaos, and today we're going to take a look at reboxing Kemet Blood and Sand. But the first thing I'd like to do is do a shout out to Nicholas. Thank you, Nicholas, for commenting on my unboxing video. And I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so I'm not going to try and butcher it. So what Nicholas commented on was he called me out on not showing you guys the art print that came with the game. So this one here is the art print. It's quite nice. I don't know if this is a standard framing size, but I'll probably take a look at trying to frame it myself and saying that I do appreciate the fact that they don't have any kind of essentially logo or labels on it. It makes the artwork very clean. And if anyone were to ask me about this, why I have this art print on the wall, then I can introduce them to Kemet. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the reboxing of the Kemet. So first of all, the insert itself is nicely ordered, although I do have a minor complaint, but we'll get to that afterwards. So over here is your monsters area, over here, and this one middle bit here is for the essentially individual player bags. The top part is for your divine intervention cards, for the DI cards, and the bottom part here is for your combat oriented cards. So my complaint is I prefer, the individual player insert to contain everything I require for a player without going to somewhere else to look for said components. So one of the things you notice that every player has his own combat card. So you can clearly see this one has essentially a black triangle, which essentially represents the Anubis faction. Now, the Anubis faction, they are too big to fit into the individual inserts. So what they were expecting you to do was to put them over here. But what that meant is, unless you're playing with 5 players, and then that way you can take everything out and you can hand it out. But if you were only playing with maybe 2 or 3 players, you're going to have to hunt through all your cards to look for the correct faction color to then hand off to that player. It's not a major thing, but it's just a minor complaint of mine. Like I said, I prefer to try and do quick setups, and the fact that this isn't assisting me in that is a minor bug to me. Now, the other thing is I have a tendency to sleeve my cards. So the fact that this insert itself, let me just grab a few, seems to be a bit on the smaller side for sleeve cards. So I'm not sure if you I can't push it all the way down without scratching the side of the insert, nor can I do it this way. So what this meant was this here is a little bit too small for my preference of sleeving cards. My actual solution for this is what I'll do is I was looking to swap the DI cards or the Divine Intervention cards with the combat cards in the insert. So you can see here that it will fit in here quite nicely. The problem I have is the space is a bit small to be able to put my hand into. I've got relatively, I like to think, smaller hands than people, or at least average. But it's not easy to take the card. So what I've chosen to do is I'm putting my Divine Intervention cards at the bottom, and then I'll put my combat cards on top. Now you'll see that it sits relatively flush, but that's because there's some air between the cards. So if you push it down, you've got a little bit of space. And when I do want to take out my combat cards, I usually just flip it off to the side, and that gives me some leverage on taking my cards out. So then what I'll do in this space is I'll put all the additional essentially stretch goal components. So this is the stretch goal power tiles that you can get. I'll put it here. The stretch goal are essentially deluxe obelisk components, which you don't really need, but it's Kickstarter and I'm a big fan of miniatures. So then I'll put that in here. This is your gold and silver essentially tokens that you can get from your power tiles. Okay, now let's take a look at the individual play bags. So I'm going to look at Sorbek. Sorbek is essentially the blue faction. And so what I've done is I've added all three of the pyramids and still in the same bag. I've added all the pyramid tops in here, so that includes the emerald one. I've just tried this for now, but I'll probably take a look at reviewing this later to see whether I still want that plastic bag or try and put it all in this one bag. And then now, let's take a look what else is in here. This might be a bit messy, so bear with me. So let me grab the player board. So there is one component that I'm not 100% sure what that and this is this cardboard token. I suspect it's the player order token, but I'll probably have to double check on this. So over here is essentially you should have 5 cardboard tokens, just dropping miniatures everywhere. 5. And what these 5 tokens are to represent each of your pyramid tops. So you've got your ruby one here, your sapphire, emerald, diamond, and onyx. And so when you start essentially Kemet, what you want to do is you want to choose 3 pyramids and their powers. So if I was to go for an offensive build, I may go with a ruby, a diamond for support, and maybe I want to try the new expansion. So I will use these 3, and then I'll slot them in here. So what this will represent is the types of pyramid that I've chosen to build for my essentially my civilization or my faction. And when I put a token on one of these, that's me saying I want to upgrade that particular pyramid. Other than that, we've got your standard miniatures. There should be 12 of these. And so that's the reason why I said I wasn't sure about the player order token, because I've got this essentially square player order token, which sits nicely on these squares from 1 to 6. So then I wonder if this was really meant to be here. Maybe this is your standard retail edition, and for the deluxe edition, you get one of these. That's what I suspect at the moment. I'm not 100% sure, but I guess I'll take a look at this later on. The good thing about this board is it goes up to 6 players, so I'm guessing at some stage they're looking to add essentially another expansion for the 6th player. Alright, now let me quickly put this back in the bags. A bit messy, so bear with me. Alright, and then I'll now slot these back into its essentially individual player spots. So you'll put them in here, and what you want to try and do is you want to try and keep this flush against this I guess top of this insert. So, and I'll get to why you want to do that later. Now let's take a look at the 3 monster bags. So there's all the bags are essentially made of a satinly type material. I've separated the monsters in terms of the I guess emerald colors, or not emerald, the gem colors. So one of them will have all the ruby and sapphire monsters. The next one will have the diamond and onyx, and then the last one would have emerald. I've also kept the 2 stretch goals, one separately, which is the sandworm and the sacred bull, because I'm not 100% sure whether I want to add this 100% into all my games yet. So I've kept them separate for now, and they can just sit nicely to the sides. Right, and the reason why previously, I'll have to put this again later, in the actual bags. The reason why I said you want to try and keep this flush because they made this essentially slot in here that can hold all your cards, all the player boards. And then the scoreboard will go nicely up here, which is essentially quite neat in the sense that it now covers your essentially the combat cards and keeping these combat cards in place, which for me is pretty handy. Now over here is up to you whether you want to put your additional boards. I've chosen not to put it here because I wanted it to be flush on the bottom side, so I'm going to put my boards on the top. So this is essentially all the power tiles done in the same order as what was in the book. So it's ruby, sapphire, diamond, onyx, and emerald. So from that will go over here. And then we'll take a look at this box here. This box here is for your essentially your fame points and other loose components. So over here is your essentially your individual fame points. The darker side seems to be to represent permanent ones, and the lighter temporary fame points. Yep, and they go into the two square boxes because these are square. And not only that, let's see if I can show you. There's a symbol in here that shows what should go in here. And so that should be the same as this one. So you can see, not sure if you can see that clear, but there's a little essentially pyramid looking shape in there. So that means all your pyramid tokens in here. So this one here, there should be, what is it, 15? So 3 for each player, and what that will be is every time you upgrade your pyramid to a level 4, you get a permanent pyramid fame point. Now these can move around because if another player captures your pyramid, they can steal your fame point and you would lose it. These transparent ones will go to the essentially on the board where all the temples are, and they're all temporary. So you'll take them when you capture them, and then you'll have to give it back when you lose control of said temples. This one here is essentially your veteran points. The veteran points are used for essentially when you lose in battle. So if you're the defender, you will gain these. So even if you lost in the combat, you will gain essentially a veteran tokens, and the veteran tokens are used to claim for additional prayer power for the next turn. Yep. Then this slides on top of all the monsters. And then I've essentially just scattered my I guess boards around to try and keep it as even as I can. Then the player board, followed by the play guides, 5 of them, your essentially rulebook. So what I try to do is there should be 6 books of about the same size, so I put them that way, and then your final overall Kemet rulebook. Yeah. And of course, last of all, the lid. And so this is my reboxing of Kemet Blood and Sand. So thank you all for watching. Again, thanks, a shout out to Nicholas for commenting on my unboxing video, and I hope you guys all have a good day. Cheers.